Hello and welcome to another episode of the Kid Stories Podcast. I'm Phil Bechtel. Let's get into a shout-out. Anahira from New Zealand is turning 10 years old this month. That's awesome. Happy birthday. I hope for your birthday you get a team of tiny robots that will do whatever you say, and a pair of glasses that lets you see through walls, and a hat that makes you invisible, and a big bucket of goofballs. If you were a character in the stories, I think you would be the wish giver, and you would have the power to grant other people's wishes. Thanks for listening, Anahira. Today's episode is titled The Dragon's Egg, Part 3. Eugene soared over the ocean while the goblins in their boat tried to keep up. It would be at least a day before they reached the fog, and then who knows how long before they found the island within the fog. Everyone knew about the fog. It was like a thick cloud that sat on the ocean. Everyone avoided it. Some people knew that's where the dragon hunters lived, or were reported to live. Some explorers adventured into the fog and recorded the things they found, but no one really knew what all was in there. Some believed that mist wraiths haunted the area within the fog. Others swore they had seen fog golems lumbering on the islands within the cloud. And the most popular tale is that Mistmaker Morrigan, an ancient magical creature with the body of a woman and the legs of an ostrich, created the fog to give her a place to live away from the rest of the world. Of course, the only thing that people really know is to stay away from the fog. And here Eugene and a boat full of goblins and cats were headed straight for it. After days of travel, they reached the wall of fog. It stretched for miles. The fog was so thick you couldn't see anything within, just gray. Eugene pumped his wings gently and floated down to the goblin's boat. "I'm going to hold on to the mast and pull you through the fog. That way we don't get split up." Yes, okay," the goblin said. The little green goblins, nearly 50 of them, all clambered to the edge of the boat, leaning over the railing and squinting to try and see anything out in front of them, out there in the fog. Eugene continued on, flying as slow as he could, pulling the big ship through the water, wondering what, if anything, they were going to eventually run into. Luckily, it wasn't a stone cliff wall. It was sand. The ship dragged to a stop as Eugene pulled it into a beach that he didn't even see until the boat stopped and he looked down. The goblins all leaped off the boat, happy to be on land finally. Goblins don't really care much for water travel. And Eugene's huge dragon feet sank into the sand as he looked around suspiciously. "Stay together," he shouted to the goblins. They skittered into a tight group and began unpacking some bags, handing out food they brought. The goblins knew Eugene was a friend, but he was also pretty intimidating, and sometimes the goblins were scared of him. "Wait, what is that?" Eugene asked, noticing them taking all kinds of things, weapons and artifacts, out of the bags they brought. "Oh, we brought good stuff," one of the goblins said. "Lots of good stuff to help get Lev and Steve back." Eugene saw some of the things the goblins had been finding deep underground beneath the valley. One thing in particular caught his eye. It was a solid black staff, quite tall for a goblin to be holding. At the top of the staff was a blue twinkle, like a tiny light shining, hovering just above the top of the black staff. The fog around the twinkling staff disappeared, allowing them to see through the fog just a little bit. It didn't make the fog disappear completely, but it helped. "You, climb up here and keep that staff pointed out in front of me," Eugene said to the little goblin holding the staff. The little green guy excitedly climbed up the gray dragon's back and held on right up near the top of his head, holding the staff out in front of him so the dragon could see a little better. The rest of the goblins crowded under and around Eugene, dodging his big feet as they walked into the jungle of this island in the fog. They stomped around for a while, keeping a lookout for anything unusual and making sure to stop and listen every so often. The island itself was fairly typical. Strange creatures adapted to the fog scurried about, and the plants weren't too different from the ones in the valley. But the fog was so thick they couldn't see very far, even with the sparkle staff. Eventually, their journey came to a halt, an abrupt halt. Eugene ran into something that he couldn't even see. What is this?" he grumbled just after his face smashed into an invisible wall. He swiped out with his claws and they scraped against nothing. Some little goblins banged on the invisible wall with their weapons, and they just clanged right off as if they were attacking a rock wall. "It's some kind of magical force field," Eugene said. "Well, at least we know we're on the right track. But how do we get in there? Stand back." The goblins all scooted back near the dragon's tail. He took a few deep breaths and unleashed a huge blast of flames upon the force field. It had no effect. "We dig!" A little goblin nearby cackled. Its head was popped up from a hole in the ground. "Is no force field underground." Eugene grumbled. Goblins annoyed the Gray Dragon, but he knew they were resourceful, and especially in great numbers they could be formidable in battle. That's exactly why he told them to join him on this journey. He knew he would need the goblins to defeat the dragon hunters. He watched as a few goblins worked together to dig a hole. They worked quickly, and soon 2 little goblins popped up on the other side of the invisible force field. The rest of the goblins scurried through the hole into the other side. "Gray Dragon, come on," one of the goblins said. Eugene looked down at the little hole they had dug. "I can't fit in that hole, goblin," he said. "Oh, right, hang on, let's go," the goblins chattered. And all 50 of them now worked together to dig out a huge ditch beneath the force field that was just big enough for Gray Dragon to squeeze through. It was pretty impressive. Once on the other side of the force field, Eugene noticed that within that bubble, there was little fog. They could see like normal all around them. And what they saw in the distance was a huge tower carved right out of a mountain. Lightning crackled all around the mountain like vines wrapped around a tree. The tower rose up from the peaks of a mountain range all around it. The goblins mounted their cats, and some just stepped closer to Eugene. The Gray Dragon lumbered toward the tower. Without discussing it, they all knew that would be their final destination. The group moved slowly. They knew that this was the dragon hunters' domain, and they could be ambushed any second. Before they encountered any dragon hunters, though, they noticed a large opening that led into the ground. Eugene knew the opening was so large because of the dragons they brought here. It was said that the dragon hunters even had evil dragons who worked with them. But Eugene never believed that, until now. Seeing an entrance designed so large that a dragon could fit through made him realize that there were very likely dragons here. Dragons who betrayed their own kind and worked with the dragon hunters to steal the magical essence of other dragons. The goblins were eager to get down into the dark since they were used to living underground. So they all carefully walked through the cave opening and into the darkness of the tunnel. Huge stairs led down deep underground, and the goblins said, "These tunnels lead up to Mountain Tower, maybe." It made sense. That mountain tower was obviously where some kinds of magical things happened. "We'll follow the tunnels and try to get up into that mountain tower," said Eugene. "Be alert." The goblins all crept in the darkness, torchlight flickering and casting dancing shadows on the walls. They carried knives and clubs and daggers and any weapon they had gathered for themselves before leaving the valley to come on this mission. Eugene and the others peeked into rooms that branched off of this main hallway as they walked. Stacks of dragon scale and old empty dragon eggs littered the rooms. The Gray Dragon became furious, seeing so much dragon destruction. For the longest time they walked without encountering anything or anyone. Eugene grew suspicious. He picked up a goblin and held him in front of his dragon face. "Keep a lookout behind us. Pipe up if you hear anything." He placed the little goblin on his back, facing backward. The goblin was proud to have been chosen by Eugene and invited to ride on his back. He narrowed his eyes and scanned the tunnels behind them for any signs of someone following them. After a while, the goblin gently tapped Eugene on his back, and he said, "See something? See something?" Eugene stopped and turned, and all the other goblins stopped as well, and Eugene asked, "What? What do you see?" "Don't know. Moving. Something," the little goblin reported, trying to look deeper and deeper into the darkness behind them. Eugene, taking no chances and still so angry, took a breath and exhaled a stream of flames down the hallway behind them. The walls lit up, revealing 4 figures who seemed to be hiding in plain sight. The figures leaped out of the hallway and into the open doorways of adjoining rooms, barely escaping the rush of dragonfire. For a moment, Eugene couldn't understand why they couldn't see these people right behind them. He wondered if perhaps the dragon hunters had gained some magical ability to be invisible. Then he realized. They were wearing phantom scale armor, made from the scales of a phantom dragon, giving them the ability to shift in and out of the visible spectrum of light. Seeing these dragon hunters wearing the armor of a fallen dragon enraged Eugene. "Get them!" he growled. The goblins saw what the gray dragon saw. Blurry movements dashing into rooms right before the dragon flame blasted down the hallway. So they didn't know exactly what was down there, but they knew it was something. And when the gray dragon yelled at them to do something, they did it. The goblins all raged and charged into the rooms. They discovered that the sparkle staff, the staff with the tiny twinkling star on top that they had used to see through the fog a little bit, shined off the phantom scale armor. So as that goblin held out the sparkle staff, its magical blue beams made the phantom scale armor glisten just enough for the dragon hunters to be seen. "See you!" the goblins screamed as they rushed back through the rooms and mobbed the dragon hunters. Eugene stomped in after them, ripping off their phantom scale armor while the goblins pulled their weapons from their hands before they had a chance to use them. "Where is it?" Eugene had one dragon hunter pinned to the ground, and they were face to face. The dragon hunter grimaced as Eugene pressed harder into his chest. "Where's what?" the dragon hunter gasped. "The egg! The egg and the goblins! Where are they?" Eugene said, putting more weight down into the hunter, nearly crushing him. "There! That way! They're up in the tower! But you're too late! You'll never get there in time!" The hunter gasped and tried to hold up a hand to point the way down the tunnel. The goblins had quickly tied up the other 3 hunters, and got started tying up this one as Eugene lifted his huge dragon paw off of him. "Let's go!" the gray dragon yelled, running down the hall. The goblins clambered after him, dragging along the new armor and weapons they had just taken from the hunters. Eugene wasn't sure if they would make it in time. He didn't even know in time for what. Something awful, probably. But no matter what, he knew that they would burn this place to the ground either way. The end. Thanks for listening, friends. The website is kidstoriespodcast.com. Send all your drawings and things to kidstoriespodcast@gmail.com. Adios.